Welcome to the Human Archive. If you enjoy original science fiction stories about humanity finding its place among the stars, subscribe and join us for the next one. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. Monsters. Sera Vhal had spent most of her adult life telling children that monsters were not real. It had been an easy promise when the lights worked. Kelthorn Station had once been a place of bright transit halls, crowded schools, public gardens, and great windows looking down at the pale rings of the gas giant below. Children grew up hearing maintenance machinery rumble behind walls and freight trams howl through distant tunnels. When something scratched inside a ventilation duct at night, Sera told them it was a loose panel. When shadows moved in the garden, she explained that plants shifted beneath circulation fans. When young Tavi became convinced something lived beneath her bed, Sera had shown her the empty space herself. There were systems, machines, animals, and misunderstandings. Then the Hadran Combine breached Kelthorn's outer defense perimeter and released Varkesh Stalkers into the civilian transit levels. After that, the old answer became harder to defend. Sera had come to Kelthorn 17 years earlier for what was supposed to be a 2-year teaching contract. The station had been newer then, and she had been young enough to believe that any place built of metal and pressure seals could never feel like home. She had been wrong. Kelthorn had taught her the sound of morning freight traffic, the taste of tea brewed from recycled water, and the exact 10-minute window when the school garden caught reflected sunlight from the gas giant below. She had taught some families twice. Older siblings graduated, younger ones arrived, and eventually parents who had once sat in her classroom began bringing their own children to enrollment. Tavi had spent 3 years asking questions faster than Sera could answer them. Pelin still kept a silver star sticker on the inside of his school bag because Sera had given it to him for reading aloud without hiding behind his auditory crests. The twins, Iri and Luma, cheated at counting games by using hand signals under the desk and believed Sera had never noticed. Those details mattered now. A shelter manifest said 12 children. Sera saw 12 separate disasters she was responsible for preventing. The attack had begun during afternoon lessons. At first it had sounded like another defense exercise. Alarms, sealed classroom doors, teachers reading emergency cards they had memorized years earlier. Then Station Command ordered the school population divided among hardened shelters because one evacuation tram had been destroyed and another route was under fire. Parents who could reach the school took their children. Others were already trapped in different sectors. By the time Sera reached Shelter 6, she had 12 students, one assistant teacher who had been diverted to the medical deck, and a promise from emergency control that a convoy would collect them. The convoy never came. Sera kept doing the things teachers did when the universe became unreasonable. She counted heads. She rationed water. She turned a maintenance checklist into a game for the younger children. She answered the same frightened questions more than once because children sometimes needed the same answer more than once. Above all, she projected certainty, because for most of her career certainty had been one of the things adults gave children when children could not manufacture it for themselves. Then the scratching began in the ventilation ducts, and certainty became harder to give honestly. Sera crouched beneath emergency lighting in Shelter 6 with 12 children clustered around her. The station shook. Somewhere far above, something heavy struck the habitat's armored spine. Dust sifted from the ceiling. Pelin began crying again. He was the youngest, small even for a Solari child, with one auditory crest folded flat against his head in fear. Sera put an arm around him. "It's all right." The lie came automatically. Then the shelter door opened. Every child screamed. Sera spun. 3 armored figures came through. Humans, Terran Marines. The one in front raised an empty hand immediately. "Easy." "Friendlies." Sera recognized the translator rendering. The Marine was broad even by human standards. His armor was dark gray beneath station dust, and one shoulder plate had been cracked and sealed with emergency compound. A blackened scorch mark crossed his chest. His rifle looked used, so did he? Another Marine sealed the shelter door behind them. The third checked the corridor before turning back. The leader removed his helmet. He was older than Sera had expected. Midlife, perhaps. Dark hair cut close. Gray at the temples. A narrow scar ran from his left eyebrow into his hairline. His face was damp with sweat. Malcolm asked who was in charge. Sera stood and introduced herself as Teacher Sera Vhal, and he answered with his own name and rank, Gunnery Sergeant Malcolm Veyne. His eyes swept the room as he asked for a count. Sera told him there were 12 children, with Pelin nursing a bruised ankle and 2 others carrying minor cuts. When Malcolm asked whether everyone could walk, she said yes. Good. We need to move, he said. Sera reminded him that an evacuation convoy was supposed to come to the shelter. Malcolm told her the route had collapsed roughly 40 minutes earlier. When she protested that station control had ordered them to remain sheltered, his answer was quieter. That was before the Stalkers got into the lower transit network. Several children reacted to the word. Malcolm noticed. His expression tightened. Sera stepped closer. You should not say that in front of them. He lowered his voice. Wish that changed it. Sera glanced toward the children. Tavi Wren stood at the edge of the group. Tavi was 9 years old, too observant and always listening. Selari hearing developed early, and Tavi S was exceptional even among her species. She had heard the rumors adults tried to whisper. Sera knew because Tavi had asked 3 times whether the Varkesh creatures were really inside the station. Sera had avoided answering. Now Tavi looked directly at Malcolm. Are they monsters? Sera closed her eyes for half a second. Tavi. Malcolm crouched. That surprised her. He lowered himself until he was close to the child's height. What have people told you? That the Hadran brought things that hunt people. Malcolm glanced at Sera, then back to Tavi. That part's true. Sera's irritation flared. You do not need to frighten her. Malcolm looked at her. She already is. That stopped Sera. Tavi swallowed. Are monsters real? Malcolm could have answered differently. He had choices. Sera watched him consider them. Then the human marine said, yeah. Tavi stared at him. Sera nearly intervened. Before she could, Tavi asked, are you afraid of them? Again, Malcolm could have lied. He looked toward the closed shelter door, then back to her. Yeah. Tavi's auditory crests lifted in confusion. But you're a marine. So? Aren't marines supposed to not be scared? Malcolm shook his head. No, we're supposed to do the job while we're scared. Tavi looked toward his rifle, then at the door. If you're scared, why are you going first? Malcolm stood. He checked the rifle's charge indicator. Because you're behind me. Silence filled the shelter. Sera had spent years teaching children. She knew when a sentence had entered them. Tavi said nothing else. Neither did Sera. Malcolm turned toward the other Marines. We move in 2 minutes. Then he looked at Sera. Teacher, I need your help. Her irritation remained, so did her fear. What do you need? You know them, I don't. He gestured toward the children. You keep them together, I keep the corridor clear. Sera nodded. Sera studied him again. He did not move like the heroic soldiers in recruitment recordings. He moved like an exhausted professional who had already made too many decisions that day and expected to make more. The 2 Marines with him were younger. One, Corporal Hannah Akaffer, carried a compact medical kit clipped beside her ammunition. The other, Lance Corporal Reed Das, kept checking the shelter door as if he distrusted any barrier he had not personally watched close. Malcolm pointed to them without ceremony. Akaffer stays near the middle. Das takes the rear. If I go down, Akaffer takes the route. If she goes down, Das does. You don't wait for somebody to decide who is in charge. He said it in front of Sera, not the children, and he said it with the flat tone of a man discussing where spare batteries were stored. That frightened Sera more than bravado would have. It also reassured her. He had already imagined himself becoming unavailable and had planned what happened next. Sera answered in kind. She told him which children were likely to freeze, which would try to help when they should stay put, who had poor night vision, and that Tavi could hear mechanical sounds before most Selari adults noticed them. Malcolm listened without interrupting. He did not treat the information as parental fussing. He asked one question about Pelin's ankle, another about Tavi's hearing, and then repeated the important points back to her. For the first time since the shelter doors had sealed, Sera felt as though responsibility had become divisible. Malcolm knew corridors and threats. She knew the children. Neither skill replaced the other. Malcolm replaced his helmet. The face disappeared behind armor. His voice came through the external speaker. One more thing. The children looked at him. If I say stop, you stop. If I say move, you move. If somebody falls or gets separated, the person next to them says so immediately. Nobody goes looking alone. He reached into a side pouch. Thin luminous loops emerged from the pouch, human rescue guide straps. The Marines attached one to each child, not a single rope. Individual loops connected in pairs so no child could pull the entire group down if they fell. Practical. Sera noticed Malcolm checking each connection personally. He reached Tavi last. She watched his armored hands. "Are you still scared?" Malcolm secured the strap. "Yep." Then he stood. "Let's go." Before they left the shelter, Sera turned Malcolm's guide straps into something the children already understood. School evacuation drills used partners. She paired the older students with the younger ones, put Tavi beside Pelin, and made every pair responsible for answering when she called their names. The rule was simple. You were never responsible for being fearless. You were responsible for knowing who was beside you. Malcolm watched her do it. "Good system," he said. "It is for fire drills. Today is a fire drill with worse management." Sera would have objected to the comparison under almost any other circumstances. Instead, she told the children to remember their partners, and Malcolm opened the shelter door. Chapter 2. The Rule. The first corridor was empty. That did not make it safe. Sera understood the difference almost immediately. Malcolm moved differently from everyone she knew. He did not advance quickly or dramatically. He advanced as though each doorway had already earned suspicion. Akafar followed halfway down the column. Das stayed at the rear. Sera kept the children between them. Kelthorn Station had emergency lighting, but half the fixtures were dead. Long stretches of corridor glowed dim red. Others disappeared completely into darkness until the Marines' helmet lamps swept through. The children held their guide loops. Pelin limped. Sera stayed near him. Malcolm stopped at the first junction. His raised fist was enough. Every Marine froze. The children did not. Two bumped together. Tavi nearly whispered something. Sera put a finger to her mouth. Malcolm listened, and Sera listened with him. She could hear the ventilation system, distant metal impacts, and a station alarm repeating many decks away, but nothing that explained Tavi's warning. After several seconds, Malcolm moved again, and the children followed. At the next door, Tavi stopped. Her head turned sharply, and Sera saw the change immediately. "Tavi." The girl lifted one hand. "Something S in there." Malcolm stopped immediately, and Sera's pulse jumped. The human looked at Tavi. "Where?" She pointed toward an overhead ventilation grill. Malcolm's rifle came up as Akafar and Das shifted with him. No one told Tavi she imagined it. Malcolm asked, "Moving which way?" Tavi closed her eyes. The corridor trembled beneath another distant impact. She waited. "Left." Malcolm signaled. Das moved beneath the grill and checked it with a scanner. Nothing appeared. They waited 10 seconds, then 20. Malcolm lowered the rifle slightly. "Could be duct vibration." Tavi's face fell, then something scraped above them. A slow scrape followed, metal against claw. Malcolm's rifle came back up. Sera stopped breathing. The sound moved left, exactly as Tavi had said. Malcolm pointed toward a side corridor, and the group moved quickly without breaking into a run. There was no panic in it, only practice speed. 2 minutes later, they passed another ventilation opening. Deep scratches marked the metal around it. Tavi saw them, so did Sera. The girl looked toward Malcolm. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Sera realized something then. Tavi had been frightened. She had also been correct. Malcolm had not treated fear as evidence that she should be ignored. He had treated it as information requiring verification. That distinction mattered. They reached a pressure door leading into an industrial access hall. Malcolm checked the status. Locked. Akafar connected a bypass tool. The door opened. Sera began leading the children through. Then Malcolm stopped, not because of a sound, because of the absence of one. Sera noticed his posture change. "What is it?" she whispered. Malcolm pointed upward. A large ventilation fan sat motionless behind a protective grill. She frowned. "It has lost power. Emergency grid shows this sector live." He checked a panel. The light beside the ventilation system remained green. Malcolm's rifle turned toward the darkness ahead. Sera understood the choice before Malcolm said it, and she hated understanding. The fan was not supposed to be silent. Something had stopped it. Malcolm gestured toward the alternate route. "We go around." "That adds distance." "Yeah. Is that necessary?" He looked at the dead fan. "Probably." Sera wanted certainty. There was none. They changed routes. 7 minutes later, as they crossed an upper maintenance gallery, Sera heard it. Below them came a rapid clicking sound, followed by claws scraping metal. A Varkesh Stalker moved through the corridor they had avoided. Through the grated floor, Sera saw a low body with long forelimbs and dark segmented hide moving beneath them. It had too many joints, and all of them moved with disturbing smoothness. It passed beneath them without looking up. Sera's stomach turned cold. Malcolm waited until the sound vanished. Then he whispered, "Keep moving." His fear had not made him reckless. It had made him careful. Sera began to wonder whether she had misunderstood fear as badly as Tavi had. Chapter 3. The First One. The first attack came in Junction 18. They were almost through when DOS shouted, "Contact." The corridor exploded into motion. Sera turned. Something black struck the wall. DOS fired. White muzzle flashes strobed through the darkness. The Varkesh Stalker crossed the ceiling. Sera's mind rejected the movement. It was too fast and too low. Its 4 primary limbs gripped metal with hooked claws while smaller stabilizing limbs folded tight against its body. Its head was narrow with no visible eyes. Only recessed sensory pits and a mouth that opened much farther than seemed mechanically possible. Children screamed, "DOWN." Malcolm's voice cut through everything. Sera dropped. She dragged Pelin with her. Most of the children followed immediately, but one froze. HFY grabbed the child and pulled her behind a support column. The stalker launched from the ceiling. Malcolm fired and missed. The creature struck him. He hit the wall hard enough to dent a panel. Sera heard armor scrape. The stalker recoiled. DOS fired again. A round punched through one of its limbs. The creature turned instantly toward the new threat. The creature was competent and predatory. It understood danger. Malcolm came off the wall. His rifle was gone. He drew a sidearm. The stalker lunged. Malcolm fired twice at almost touching distance. The first shot struck the upper body. The second hit beneath the jaw. The creature collapsed, but not immediately. Its limbs thrashed hard enough for its claws to score the deck. Malcolm backed away until it stopped moving. Silence returned badly. Children were crying. One Marine was bleeding from a cut along the forearm. Malcolm picked up his rifle. His hands shook and both Sera and Tavi saw it. The girl was staring. Malcolm reloaded. The fresh magazine clicked against the weapon twice before he seated it. Tavi whispered, "You're scared." Malcolm looked at his hands. Adrenaline. "Is that fear?" He checked the chamber. "Means my body's not stupid." Tavi frowned. Malcolm pointed toward the children. Malcolm asked whether everyone was still there. Sera counted twice before answering that all 12 remained with them, and a quick injury check found no new wounds among the children. DOS shook his head when Sera looked at the cut along his forearm. Armor caught most of it. Malcolm retrieved his helmet light, which had broken loose during the impact. The housing was cracked, but the light still worked. Sera looked at the dead creature. "That thing almost killed you." "Yeah." "You knew they could do that?" "Yeah." "And you still came into the station?" Malcolm looked toward her. "Teacher." "Yes." "We should move before its friends. Notice we're standing around discussing career choices." Sera stared at him. Then, despite everything, a nervous sound escaped her. Almost laughter. Malcolm pointed down the corridor. "Let's go." Chapter 4. Keep your feet moving. The children changed after the attack, not all at once. Pelin cried harder. One of the older children asked 3 times whether another stalker was coming. Tavi became very quiet, but something else happened. They started obeying faster. When Malcolm raised his fist, the children stopped. When HFY pointed them toward cover, they moved. When one child stumbled, the next child immediately said, "Sera, he's down." Nobody wandered. Nobody tried to be brave by pretending not to be afraid. They simply became useful. Sera noticed it most in Pelin. His ankle hurt and he was exhausted. After another kilometer, he began crying again, quietly at first, then hard enough that breathing became difficult. Sera crouched beside him. "We can stop." Malcolm looked back. He studied Pelin, then checked the corridor. 30 seconds. Sera stroked the child's auditory crest. Pelin gasped, "I can't." Malcolm crouched. The armor made the motion clumsy. He did it anyway. "You can cry." Pelin stared at him. Malcolm continued, "You can be scared, but keep your feet moving when we move." Pelin wiped his face. "Even if I'm crying." "Especially then, crying doesn't stop your legs." Sera almost corrected him. For Celari anatomy, that was technically true but culturally odd. Then Pelin nodded. Malcolm stood. "Ready." The child was still crying. "Yes." They moved again. Pelin kept walking with Sera beside him. She had spent years trying to make frightened children stop looking frightened. Malcolm did something else. He gave fear somewhere to stand while the rest of the person kept functioning. She did not yet know whether that was better. The evidence was becoming difficult to ignore. Chapter 5. The teacher. They rested in a sealed maintenance room 2 kilometers from the evacuation deck. The room smelled of hot metal and coolant. but the walls were intact, and the door had a mechanical lock Malcolm trusted. Das guarded it while Ockhafer cleaned the cut on his forearm and pretended not to notice how much it hurt. Malcolm sat against a storage cabinet with his rifle across his knees. Sera gave the children water, checked Pellin's ankle again, and made the older students divide the remaining food without arguing over portions. Tavi sat beside Pellin and quietly described the shapes in the emergency lighting until the younger child stopped staring at the door. Only after everyone else had something to do did Sera sit beside Malcolm. She told him he should rest. He pointed out that she should do the same, and when she replied that she was not carrying armor, he offered to trade. Sera declined. Malcolm called that smart and went back to inspecting the rifle's feed assembly. For a while, Sera watched his hands. Shaking from the stalker attack had diminished but not disappeared. He worked around it, using the same deliberate motions he had used before the fight. "I thought you were cruel," she said at last. Malcolm glanced up. "Probably am sometimes. When you told Tavi monsters were real, I thought you were choosing honesty over kindness." He considered that while receiving a power cell. "I was trying not to make her choose between what she could hear and what an adult told her. Kids lose that argument too often." Sera looked toward Tavi. The girl was whispering to Pellin and tapping a rhythm against the floor with one finger. "Before today, I wasn't lying to them. There really weren't monsters." "I know." Malcolm locked the rifle closed. "Different job before today." That answer surprised her enough that she asked what he meant. Malcolm rested his helmet against one knee. "You taught them the world was safe enough to explore. That's a good thing to teach when it's true. My job starts when it stops being true for a while. Doesn't make your lesson wrong." Sera had expected a Marine to tell her that danger was the real world and safety an illusion. Malcolm seemed almost offended by the idea. He wanted the safe world restored. He simply did not confuse wanting it with having it. She asked why he admitted fear so easily. In Solari culture, adults were expected to project calm around children. Malcolm answered that Marines were expected to project calm too, but calm and fear were not opposites. "First time I got shot at, I was 19, he said. "Refinery habitat over series, not a war. Labor riot turned into a hostage mess, somebody panicked, and suddenly rounds were going through pressure doors. I remember staring at a red decompression light and thinking I had no business being there." Sera had difficulty imagining him at 19. "What did you do?" "Nothing useful for about 3 seconds. My sergeant grabbed my harness and asked me what my next job was, not the whole rescue, not whether I was brave, just the next job. Seal that door. Then move those people, then cover that corridor." Malcolm shrugged carefully. "Turns out fear gets a lot smaller when you give your hands something specific to do." He did not make the memory sound noble. Sera suspected that was why she believed it. "And you have done this ever since?" she asked. "Not this." Malcolm looked toward the children. "Never exactly this. 23 years and the universe still finds new ways to make a bad day original. I've done station fires, boarding evacuations, decompression rescues, riots, one flood on a habitat that should not have been capable of flooding, and enough combat to know I prefer the other things. Children are worse." Sera stared at him. "Worse? Higher stakes, they believe you." For once, she understood him immediately. Das spoke from the door before either could continue. The freight concourse still looked open, but the alternative service route would add 2 kilometers. Malcolm's expression changed from conversation to calculation almost instantly. Sera asked how much time remained. Malcolm told her the evacuation shutters would begin their final cycle in 40 minutes. The concourse itself was only 600 meters long, which sounded manageable until Malcolm explained that it was open, high-ceilinged, full of overhead cargo structures, and connected to more service passages than they could clear. Tavi had wandered close enough to hear. She looked at Malcolm and told him he was scared again. He admitted he was, perhaps a little more than before. When she asked whether they should go back, Malcolm looked toward the damaged route behind them and said, "No, back isn't safer." Then he put on his helmet, checked that Sera had all 12 children, and opened the door. He went first. Chapter 6. The concourse. The freight concourse had once been loud enough to make conversation difficult. Now it was silent. Cargo gantry stood frozen above long loading lanes. Emergency lighting reflected from abandoned containers. One wall had been breached by weapons fire, exposing damaged machinery behind it. The far evacuation door looked impossibly distant. Malcolm stopped before entering. Sera stopped the group before the threshold and did what Malcolm had done in the shelter. She gave everyone one job. The twins were to watch each other's guide straps. The oldest student, Maris, would carry the spare water bottle and tell her if Pellin slowed. Tavi's job was not to be brave or quiet about what she heard. Her job was to report it immediately. The younger children only had to keep one hand on their loops and follow the person in front. Malcolm listened to the assignments. You do this every field trip. Field trips generally contain fewer predators. Bad school district. Sera almost smiled. The children did. It was a small sound, gone quickly, but it loosened something in the group. She realized Malcolm had been right about one thing she had resisted all day. Calm did not require pretending the danger was absent. Sometimes calm was simply giving frightened people a next task small enough to perform. He spoke quietly. We cross together. No running unless I say, stay near the cargo markers. If something comes from above, get under the loading rails. The children listened. Sera did too. Malcolm looked at Tavi. You hear anything? She tilted her head. For almost 10 seconds, nobody moved. Something far away. Direction. Behind us, maybe below. Malcolm nodded. Good. They entered. Sera hated every step. The concourse offered too many directions. There was too much height and too much dark machinery. Malcolm moved ahead. Das kept looking upward. Halfway across, an explosion shook the station. The explosion was not close, but it was close enough. A suspended cargo frame swung. Metal screamed overhead. The deck jumped beneath Sera's feet. Someone shouted. Pellin's guide loop yanked free of the child beside him. Sera spun and saw that Pellin was gone. For an instant, her mind stopped. Then a small voice cried from below. Sera. She ran toward the edge. Malcolm caught her armor harness. Stop. Pellin. I hear him. A maintenance barrier had collapsed. Pellin had fallen through an opening onto a service deck roughly 4 meters below. Pellin lay beside a broken access ladder 4 meters below them. He was moving and conscious. Alive, Sera dropped to her knees. Pellin. I hurt. You stay there. Malcolm looked toward the concourse. Tavi's head snapped around. Something's coming. Everyone froze. Where? Malcolm asked. Tavi pointed toward the route behind them. Fast. The Marines reacted. Das moved into cover at the rear. Akafor took position beside the children. Malcolm looked down at Pellin, then toward the far evacuation door. Sera understood. There isn't time. Malcolm looked at her. She felt sick saying it. There are 11 here. His face became unreadable behind the visor. Sera continued. If we stay, we may lose all of them. Malcolm nodded. That's why you're leaving. She stared. What? He pointed toward Akafor. Akafor takes you to the evacuation deck. You keep the kids moving. Das covers you and falls back once you clear the concourse. And Pellin. I get Pellin. You cannot go alone. Can't spare both rifles. Sera grabbed his arm. You said nobody goes looking alone. Kids don't. That isn't what you said. No. Malcolm pulled a compact flare from his belt and checked it. By then even Sera could hear the approaching claws, distant but rapid, closing through the concourse behind them. Tavi stood beside Malcolm. Her face had gone pale. Are you afraid? Malcolm looked through the broken barrier into the dark level below. When he answered, there was no humor left. Very. Then he climbed over the edge. Chapter 7. Going anyway. Malcolm disappeared beneath the deck. Sera hated him for that for 3 seconds. Then Akafor grabbed her shoulder. Teacher, move. No. Gunny's orders. Pellin is down there. He knows. Sera looked toward the opening. Malcolm's helmet light moved below. Pellin cried again. Then Tavi whispered, they're closer. That decided it. Sera stood. Children move. 11 children moved with Sera instead of 12, and the missing number hurt with every step. Das fired down the concourse behind them. Something shrieked. Sera saw movement along a distant gantry. Das shouted, go. They ran. This time Malcolm wasn't in front. That felt wrong. The children passed one cargo marker and then the next. Sera counted while she moved, 11 still with her, 1 with Malcolm below. Her comm unit crackled with Malcolm's voice. I've got him. Sera almost fell. Is he hurt? Leg conscious. A metallic crash sounded through his transmission. Gunfire erupted through the transmission and Pellin screamed. Sera's heart seemed to stop. Malcolm. No answer. Akafor shoved another cargo barrier open beside her. Keep moving. Sera obeyed because she had 12 children. 1 child was below with Malcolm, 11 were still here with her, because Malcolm had told her what her job was. They reached the far side of the concourse. The evacuation corridor opened ahead. Sera stopped just inside cover. Akaffer turned. "We keep going." "No, teacher. I can see the shuttle corridor from here." He hesitated. Sera continued. "You take the children 50 meters ahead, I wait here." Gunny said, "I heard him." Akaffer stared at her. Sera understood that look now. Calculation. He didn't like the answer. He accepted it. 30 seconds. "Fine." Tavi stayed beside Sera instead of following the others. "You go." "No, Tavi. I can hear them." Akaffer looked at the child, then at Sera. Akaffer swore softly, "Stay behind cover." Akaffer moved the other children toward the evacuation corridor. Das fell back across the final cargo marker a few seconds later, firing once toward the gantry before joining Akaffer at the corridor mouth. Both Marines were still with the group. Sera counted them too, though she would not have admitted it. Sera crouched beside Tavi while gunfire echoed below them and then stopped. The silence that followed felt far too complete. Tavi tilted her head and listened. "I hear Pelin." "Where?" "Coming." Sera leaned forward into the silence, straining to see through the broken barrier. Then metal scraped against the broken barrier. An armored human hand appeared. Malcolm hauled himself upward with one arm. Pelin was strapped against his chest using a rescue harness. Sera lunged forward. Together they pulled the child onto the concourse. Malcolm followed. His left shoulder plate was gone. Blood ran from a deep cut beneath it. His rifle was missing. Sera grabbed Pelin. The child clung to her. "What happened?" Malcolm drew a sidearm. "Stalkers still moving." Tavi whispered, "I hear it." Malcolm pushed himself upright. Sera stared at him. "How?" "Maintenance flare." "What?" "Hotter than us." Threw it down the auxiliary passage. A roar came from below. Malcolm looked toward the opening. Didn't fool it long. He pointed toward the evacuation corridor. "Move." Sera shifted Pelin into her arms. Tavi stayed beside Malcolm. Part of Malcolm's helmet had broken away, leaving his face visible. He was pale and breathing too quickly when Tavi looked up at him. "How do you stop being scared?" Malcolm stared at her as if the question itself confused him. "I don't." The stalker struck the underside of the broken barrier. Metal buckled as Malcolm raised the sidearm, then nodded toward the corridor. "Come on." They ran. Chapter 8. The last corridor. Malcolm could not use his left arm properly. That changed everything. Akaffer took point while Das guarded the rear, leaving Malcolm in the middle with Sera and the children. Sera carried Pelin until her back began burning. Tavi held Pelin's guide loop even though the child was no longer walking. One older student carried Malcolm's spare ammunition pouch. Another took the emergency light that had fallen from his damaged armor. Nobody had been told to do those things. They simply saw what needed carrying. The children had changed roles without anyone formally assigning them. Maris took the ammunition pouch because Malcolm's injured arm could no longer carry it comfortably. Luma held the broken armor light. Iri kept one hand at Pelin's back whenever Sera had to shift the child's weight. Tavi listened behind them and for once did not apologize each time she asked the group to stop. Sera recognized the pattern because she had watched it form in classrooms for years. Children became more capable when adults gave them real responsibility sized to what they could actually do. Malcolm had not turned them into soldiers. He had done something much more useful. He had refused to make helplessness part of the definition of being frightened. Sera kept counting. 12 was no longer merely a number on a shelter manifest. It was a moving system of pairs, injuries, water, hands, voices, and small jobs. Her work and Malcolm's had become difficult to separate. The evacuation corridor shook beneath them. A station voice announced final pressure isolation. 7 minutes. The shuttle deck doors would close after that. They moved faster until Malcolm stumbled. Sera grabbed him, earning an irritated look. "You've got a child. And you have a hole in your shoulder." "Fair." They kept moving. Tavi stopped. Malcolm nearly ran into her. "What?" She lifted one hand. Everyone fell silent. Far behind them came the unmistakable rhythm of claws, at least one set and perhaps two. Tavi's eyes widened. "They're following." Malcolm looked toward the final junction. The shuttle deck lay beyond it. Distance. Tavi listened. Close. Malcolm turned toward Akaffer. "Akaffer, take them." "No." That was the first time Sera had heard Akaffer refuse him. Malcolm's voice hardened. "You've got working armor and a rifle. You take them. Das covers the rear. What are you doing? Closing the junction. Sera saw the manual emergency door at the junction and understood Malcolm's plan. The mechanical lever was on their side. He could close the barrier after everyone else passed, leaving himself behind. Before he could finish saying it, Tavi cut him off with a sharp, "No." Malcolm looked at her. The child pointed upward. There. A maintenance panel sat above the corridor. Malcolm frowned. What? Something S moving in it. Everyone froze. The ceiling panel flexed. Das raised his rifle. Tavi pointed. Not there, farther. He adjusted. The panel burst open. The stalker dropped. Das fired before it hit the floor. Rounds tore across its flank. The creature twisted under the rounds but kept coming. Malcolm fired his sidearm. The stalker leaped. Sera pulled Tavi back. Das stepped into its path. A claw struck his chest armor. He went down. Malcolm fired again. The stalker turned toward him. That was a mistake. Das rolled beneath the creature after the blow, shoved his rifle up under its body, and fired. The stalker collapsed. This one stopped moving quickly. Nobody waited to admire it. Das stood. Das's chest plate was deeply scored but intact. Malcolm pointed down the corridor. Now we move. They moved. The emergency countdown dropped from 4 minutes to 3 as the shuttle deck finally appeared ahead. Human and Solari defenders stood behind barricades. They saw the children. Someone shouted. The final doors began cycling. Sera ran. Her lungs burned. Pelin clung to her neck. One child tripped. The child beside him shouted immediately. A human defender sprinted forward and hauled both upright. Malcolm staggered again. Tavi took his good hand. He looked down. I can walk. I know. She didn't let go. They crossed the threshold. The pressure doors closed behind them with an enormous impact. Then came real silence, safe silence, and for the first time in hours, nothing was hunting them. Sera counted every child twice before letting herself believe the number. 12, all 12. Only then did her knees stop working. She sat on the floor, Pelin still in her arms. Across the deck, medics reached the Marines. Malcolm lowered himself against the wall before they could force him onto a stretcher. His whole body trembled. Tavi sat beside him. She noticed. This time she didn't ask if he was afraid. She already knew. Chapter 9. After. The evacuation shuttle launched 6 minutes later. Kelthorn Station shrank beneath them. From the viewport, Sera could see fires burning along the damaged transit ring. Human escort ships moved around the refugee transports. Farther out, defensive vessels traded fire with Hadran warships. The battle was not over. Inside the shuttle, it felt finished. At least for 12 children. Pelin's ankle was fractured, though not badly, and a medic stabilized it. Das needed stitches and a replacement armor seal for the cut he had taken during the first attack. Malcolm had a deep shoulder laceration, 2 cracked ribs, and what the medic called an impressively stupid collection of bruises. He remained conscious. That appeared to disappoint the medic. Sera sat across from him, Tavi beside her. Pelin lay on a medical couch nearby. After several minutes, Pelin opened his eyes. Are the monsters gone? The adults went quiet. Sera felt the old answer rise automatically. Yes, you're safe. There are no monsters here. Malcolm spoke first. No. Several adults looked at him. He shifted carefully against the wall. But we're somewhere they can't reach us right now. Pelin considered. That seemed enough. He closed his eyes again. Tavi remained awake. She watched Malcolm. There will be more monsters. Probably. Sera almost objected. Then she stopped herself. Tavi looked toward the viewport. And you'll still be scared. Malcolm gave her a tired smile. Probably. She thought about that. Then asked, are there always people who go first? Malcolm did not answer immediately. Sera looked at the frightened girl from the shelter, the one who had warned them about the vents, listened for stalkers when armored adults could not hear them, and held Malcolm's hand during the final run even though he claimed he did not need it. Sera answered for him. Yes. Tavi looked toward her teacher. Sera nodded. Yes, there are. Malcolm leaned his head back against the shuttle wall. For once, he had nothing to add. That was probably wise. Sera slept for 11 hours after the refugee transport reached Coalition space. When she woke, she discovered that teachers from 3 damaged habitats had already begun arguing over temporary classroom assignments. The normality of the argument nearly made her cry. Malcolm spent 2 days in surgery and another week insisting that rehabilitation staff were conspiring against him personally. Akafor told Sera that this was normal Marine behavior, and therefore not medically significant. Das returned to duty before Malcolm and sent Pelin a replacement guide loop with the words 4 future field trips written on the package. Sera visited Malcolm once before the Marines rotated away from the refugee corridor. She expected Tavi to have questions for him. Instead, the child handed him a drawing of Shelter 6 with 12 small figures behind one enormous armored figure at the door. Malcolm stared at it for a long time before asking why he had been drawn twice as wide as everyone else. Tavi told him armor counted. He accepted that explanation. He did not tell the children they had been brave. Sera noticed. He told them they had listened, helped one another, reported problems, and kept moving when movement was required. Those were things they could choose to do again. Sera wrote that down later. Epilogue. The hallway. 7 months later, Sera Vhal was teaching again, not on Kelthorn. Kelthorn Station had been retaken eventually, but much of the civilian ring remained uninhabitable. The refugee school occupied 3 levels of a converted research habitat. It was smaller and noisier. The classrooms had strange proportions. The ventilation system made a clicking sound that had terrified several children during their first week. They got used to it. Children were good at that. A storm in the gas giant's upper atmosphere disrupted station power during evening lessons. The lights went out. Several younger children screamed. The refugee school had changed some of Sera's lessons. Evacuation drills now included darkened corridors and partner checks. Older students practiced giving clear reports instead of simply being told to stay calm. Nobody used the word courage in the instructions. Sera had discovered that courage was difficult to teach directly, and much easier to find after people had been given useful things to do. Tavi still disliked the new drills. She participated anyway. Pelin, whose ankle had healed completely, complained that he had become famous for falling through floors and insisted this was unfair because the floor had failed first. Sera agreed with his technical interpretation. Emergency illumination failed to activate immediately. Sera stood. "Everyone stay where you are." A small voice from the back said, "There's something in the hallway." Sera almost smiled. Some things survived evacuation. She activated a hand light. Before she could move, someone else took it. It was Tavi Wren. She was taller now, though not by much, and she still hated sleeping near ventilation grills. Metal scraping unexpectedly behind walls could still make her freeze, and dark corridors still frightened her. Sera could see it in the way her auditory crests folded. A younger child looked at her. "What if there's a monster?" Tavi stared into the black hallway. Her grip tightened around the light. She was afraid. Sera knew what that meant now. Tavi switched the beam on. "Then we should find out before everybody else walks into it." She stepped into the hallway. Sera followed. The monster turned out to be a maintenance cart that had rolled loose during the power interruption. Tavi stared at it, then laughed so hard she had to lean against the wall. Sera laughed too. Neither of them said the monsters weren't real. They didn't need to. They turned the cart's brake on, checked the next corridor, and kept going.